You need to see this before it goes viral. Donald Trump said so much in just a few words last week when he made the panel at Fox and Friends laugh out loud over a comedic jibe at Kamala Harris in response to a kid's question on cows. But I think the show missed what he was actually trying to say beneath the surface, so watch what he said because there's so much that I need to tell you about.
We got a 6-year-old from Massachusetts, and he wants to know about your favorite animal. Let's watch.
President, my name is Briar. I'm 6 years old. I live on a farm in Massachusetts. What's your favorite farm animal?
Favorite farm animal?
What's the animal?
Well, this guy grew up in the city.
I'll tell you what I love. I love cows. But if we go with Kamala, you won't have any cows anymore because you're not allowed. I don't want to ruin this kid's day. But I love cows. I think they're so cute and so beautiful and so productive. But according to Kamala, who's a radical left lunatic, you will not have any cows anymore. So we have to vote her out. If you like cows, you have to vote.
I know.
Donald Trump has an uncanny ability to coat political comebacks in a layer of comedy, and you know why? Well, it's that you've been following the subtle shift in the Democratic campaign's attack vector against Trump. You'll know that they've shifted from some notion of joy to calling the Republican ticket weird to now trying to portray Trump as old and senile, just as what ousted Joe Biden. And over the last week, we've seen much of the left-wing online media print headlines like this in an attempt to paint something like this response as the rubber stamp on this new line of criticism. But if anyone tries to look past the sound bites and headlines, they'll realize that it's not as outlandish as it sounds. While Donald Trump may be taking it a tad too far for comedic effect, the cattle farming and the meat industry have clearly been a subject of debate in some far-left Democratic circles as something that needs to be regulated and reined in to save the environment. By the way, we do daily breakdowns of everything in politics and culture wars, so subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. And it's not just people like Kamala Harris, but also prominent Democrats like AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Cory Booker. The thesis they present is simple, and that the meat industry linked to cattle farming is not a sustainable enterprise when it comes to the environment because the process allegedly releases too much methane into the atmosphere, and therefore Americans are asked to limit meat consumption or to shift to so-called plant-based or lab-grown meat alternatives. And Kamala Harris herself doesn't even hide it anymore, and she's more than willing to control people's eating habits to do so. Here's how she responded to a question at the climate change town hall on CNN back in 2019, dressing up this kind of gross governmental overreach in personal life as the most virtuous thing that you can do for the planet.
I think of the point that you're raising in a broader context, which is that as a nation, we actually have to have a real priority at the highest level of government around what we eat and in terms of healthy eating, because we have a problem in America. And we can talk about all that we are now, the subject of this conversation, we can talk about the amount of sugar in everything. We could talk about soda, we could go on and on. So the answer is yes. But I'll also say this, the balance that we have to strike here, frankly, is about what government can and should do around creating incentives and then banning certain behaviors. I mean, just to be very honest with you, I love cheeseburgers from time to time, right? I mean, I just do. And I think that, but there has to be also what we do in terms of creating incentives that we will eat in a healthy way, that we will encourage moderation, and that we will be educated about the effect of our eating habits on our environment. And we have to do a much better job of that, and the government has to do a much better job of that.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, you love cheeseburgers. I mean, we all do. I don't know whether
you know, from time to
try
time,
the Beyond Burger, the Impossible
yeah.
Burger, right? They try, but it's not quite the same. That's my personal opinion. But would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What people
yes.
Now, of course, since this is 5 years old, Kamala Harris can conveniently slip this under the rug and forget it ever happened, like she's done with many of her other policy positions and crimes, allegedly. And there's one reason for that. Kamala just doesn't have too many ideas of her own to begin with, and she's not a thoughtful leader for the Democratic Party. She's more of a talking head that plucks whatever popular from the political ether and drops it the moment it becomes politically inconvenient. And a lot of people are speculating, and perhaps rightly so, that Kamala Harris's political career will be practically over if she loses this election, and that's because the Democratic establishment has already realized that she can't be the new face of the party. After this election's over, the deep party establishment will need to look for someone that can take on the media and engage the voter base better than either the current president and vice president can do. Since Kamala has taken over, she's done more damage to herself than she did in the last 3 years, and it's with people digging up her old statements that completely contradict reality as well as her own current opinions. Donald Trump was going to let that opportunity go after he just did a shift at McDonald's last week, That's because Kamala Harris claimed to have worked there as well, but it's being denied by McDonald's itself. Take a look at what he said just a few hours before Donald Trump did his shift.
Mr. President, I got a question for you. Either today or tomorrow, you're going to McDonald's. You're going to be working the fryer. Are you going to wear the paper hat?
I'm going to do everything. I tell you what.
You're going to do it.
A friend of mine
He
owns
is going to do it.
McDonald's someplace. Oh, I'm going. Because she lied.
You don't think she ever worked at McDonald's?
I know she did. We checked it out. Unless somebody comes up with something. We checked it out. They said she never worked here. She even picked the store. We went to the manager. The manager's been there forever. You remember her? No, she never worked here. They know. Okay.
No,
So will you wear the paper hat?
And you know who else stopped talking about it? The press. If I said I worked at McDonald's and it turned out not to be true, this would be the biggest story ever. The front page of that stupid New York Times, the worst paper. It is the worst rag. The New York Times is the worst, they would have me front page for months. Nobody, I can't get any. That's why I have to do it myself. That's why I'm doing it.
So you're going to get trained and you're going to make French fries.
I don't know how much the training will be.
Not too much salt.
It's not going to be.
Now I know what the comeback is going to be from the other side, so let me respond to it. Lying about working at McDonald's isn't the most groundbreaking political scandal of all time, but like all things, you cannot understand it without its context. Truth is, much of Kamala Harris's political avatar seems constructed and artificial, and part of that is her attempts to appeal to the broad segment of people by portraying her story as coming from a middle-class family. In fact, she's been repeating that like a broken record to the point that it has become a subject of memes and political skits at this point. That's why when Kamala has said several times that she worked as a fast food worker at McDonald's in her student life, people couldn't resist but ask for past records from the company to make sure this wasn't just another ploy at retaliating to people as a political maneuver.
I worked at McDonald's. I was a student when I was working at McDonald's. There was not a family relying on me to pay the rent, put food on the table, and keep the bills paid by the end of the month. But the reality of McDonald's is that a majority of the folks who are working there today are relying on that income to sustain a household and a family. And if we want to talk about these golden arches being a symbol of the best of America, well, the arches are falling short. And we have got to recognize that working people deserve livable wages. Working people deserve in these places to know that there will be a safe working environment, which means free from any physical harm, including sexual assault or abuse or harassment.
While McDonald's itself has not confirmed or denied whether she worked there in the 1980s, it says more about Kamala's political candidacy that even her saying something mundane about her past is seen with such speculation. Overall, the contrast is clear, and that's why Kamala Harris's polling numbers have fallen to dangerously low levels for her campaign in the last few weeks. But let me know in the comments what you think and share this video across your social media, because there's a lot more people that need to be in on this before November 5th.